Strange how fast life can change. One day you think you know your reality, your marriage, your home. The next, you're standing in an empty house, staring at the ghost of the life you once had. Except this time, I wasn't the one who left. She was. And by the time she walked through that door again, we were gone. I had 24 hours to make a decision, but in reality, I only needed one moment. The moment I saw the message. It wasn't even hidden, not really. Her phone was sitting there on the kitchen counter, buzzing with a notification, like it had done 1,000 times before. Maybe that was the first sign. She never left it unattended. But that night, she did. And I didn't even mean to look. I was just cleaning up, moving things around, but the screen lit up right as I reached for it, and I saw a name I didn't recognize. I should have walked away. I should have given her the benefit of the doubt. But something inside me whispered, check. I wish I hadn't. It was a simple text, nothing explicit, just 6 words. Last night was amazing. I miss you. My stomach dropped. At first, I told myself it had to be a mistake. Maybe a friend messing around. Maybe a misunderstanding. But my hands moved on their own, unlocking her phone with the passcode I'd known for years, the one she never thought to change. And then I saw the rest. The messages stretching back for months, the late-night talks, the secret jokes, the details of a relationship I was never supposed to know about. She was in love with someone else, and I was the fool who never saw it coming. I don't remember how long I stood there, scrolling, feeling my chest tighten with each message. There were no obvious declarations of love, no dramatic confessions, but the intimacy in those words, the familiarity, the way she spoke to him. It was worse than anything I could have imagined. She had been slipping away from me for a long time. I just never realized she was already gone. The rage didn't come right away, neither did the heartbreak. Instead, there was silence, a deep, suffocating silence, like the world had pressed pause and left me standing in the wreckage alone. I could hear my kids laughing in the other room, unaware that their lives were about to change. That was the moment it hit me. I couldn't stay. I had always thought betrayal would come with screaming, with fights, with shattered plates and doors slammed shut. But there was none of that. There was just acceptance. Cold, clear, unshakable. I had 24 hours before she would come back home from her so-called weekend trip. 24 hours before she could explain, before she could spin her lies, before she could try to make me doubt what I already knew. So I started packing. Not in a frenzy, not in anger, just quietly, methodically. My clothes, the kids' essentials, the little things that mattered. I didn't take everything, just enough to make sure we wouldn't have to come back. I pulled the emergency cash I had stashed away for years, the one she never knew about, and made a reservation at a motel a few towns over. I put the kids to bed like any other night, kissed their foreheads, and promised them everything would be okay, even though I didn't know if that was true. Then, I sat in the dark, staring at the phone still in my hands, debating if I should send her something. A message, a warning, some kind of sign that I knew. In the end, I didn't. She had made her choice, and now I was making mine. By the time she walked through that door, expecting to find her husband and children waiting, she would find nothing. No note, no explanation, just an empty house and the consequences of the life she had chosen. She had spent months slipping away, and in just 24 hours, I disappeared. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. The room was dark, save for the dim glow of the motel alarm clock, its red numbers slowly ticking forward, marking each minute that brought me closer to a future I hadn't planned for. The kids were asleep in the small double bed next to mine, their soft breathing the only thing grounding me. They had no idea that when they woke up, their lives would be different, no idea that we weren't going home. I wondered what Marlene was doing at that moment. Was she with him, laughing, drinking, tangled in the arms of the man she had chosen over her family? Or was she just asleep, resting easy, completely unaware that her world was about to collapse? The thought made my chest tighten. I had spent hours trying to process everything. The betrayal, the messages, the slow realization that the woman I thought I knew had been slipping away for months, maybe even longer. My mind kept looping back to every moment that suddenly made sense. The late-night work calls, the unexplained absences, The way she'd showered as soon as she got home, like she was washing something away. All the signs had been there, but I had been too blind, too trusting, too willing to believe in the illusion of what we had. But the illusion was gone now, and all that was left was this. An empty motel room, 2 sleeping children, and a man who had no idea what came next. The weight of it all was crushing. I had always been the provider, the steady one, the man who made sure his family was safe. Now I was a runaway, a single father with a car full of hastily packed bags and no real plan. I could feel the panic creeping up on me, the what-ifs stacking higher and higher. What if she fought for custody? What if she tracked us down? What if I had made a mistake? I squeezed my eyes shut and forced the thoughts away. No, this wasn't a mistake. Staying would have been the mistake. Letting her come back, pretending nothing had changed, allowing her to look me in the eyes and lie to me over and over again, that would have destroyed me. I couldn't do that to myself, and I couldn't do that to my kids. They deserved better. I deserved better. I ran a hand down my face, feeling the exhaustion deep in my bones. I needed to sleep, even if only for a few hours. Tomorrow, no, today would be the beginning of something new. I didn't know where we were going, but I knew one thing: we weren't going back. Morning came too fast. The first thing I felt was the stiffness in my back from sleeping in an unfamiliar bed. The second was the hollow ache in my chest, the reminder that this wasn't a nightmare I could wake up from. This was real. The kids stirred, their small bodies stretching under the thin motel blanket. I forced a smile as they blinked up at me, confused. "Dad?" My son, Harland, mumbled, rubbing his eyes. "Where are we?" I hesitated. "We're taking a little trip, bud. Just the 3 of us." He frowned, still groggy. "What about Mom?" I felt that question like a punch to the gut, but I had promised myself I wouldn't lie. Not to them. They had already been lied to enough. "Mom's not coming with us," I said, keeping my voice even. "But everything's okay. We're going to have an adventure." I could tell he wasn't sure how to process that. At 6 years old, he understood more than I wanted him to, but not enough to fully grasp the weight of what was happening. My daughter, Beatrice, was younger, only 3. She just yawned and snuggled into my side, accepting whatever reality I presented to her. I wished I had that same ability. We got dressed, ate a breakfast of gas station muffins and juice boxes, and loaded into the car. It was only when I pulled onto the highway that it really hit me. I had no idea where I was going. I had a brother a few states over, but we weren't close. Old high school friends, but most of them had drifted away over the years. My parents had passed, leaving me with no family home to return to. I had never felt so unmoored. I drove aimlessly for hours, stopping only for bathroom breaks and food. The kids didn't complain much, but I could feel the weight of their unspoken questions. By late afternoon, I had to face the fact that I needed a plan. I pulled into a rest stop and took out my phone for the first time since leaving. I turned it on. The screen lit up with dozens of missed calls and texts from Marlene. My stomach tightened as I hesitated, then forced myself to read them. The first few were normal. "Hey, we just got here. Hope you and the kids are having a fun weekend." Then, as the hours passed, the tone shifted. "Hey, why aren't you answering? Are you out with the kids? Call me now. Where the hell are you?" By morning, the messages had turned frantic. "This isn't funny, Liam. I just got home. Where are you? Where are the kids? If you don't answer me right now, I'm calling the police." My fingers hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to reply, to tell her exactly why she had come home to an empty house, to let her feel the full weight of what she had done. But another part of me, the smarter part, knew better. This wasn't a conversation that could happen over text, and it wasn't a conversation I was ready to have. I powered the phone off and tossed it onto the passenger seat. The kids were asleep in the back, their small faces peaceful in a way I couldn't even fathom. I envied them. Taking a deep breath, I stared out at the road ahead. I didn't know where we were going, but I knew one thing for certain: we weren't looking back. By the time the sun started setting, I was still driving, still lost in my thoughts, still wrestling with the weight of what I had done. The kids were asleep in the back seat, their little bodies curled up under a spare blanket I had grabbed from the house. The silence inside the car was almost deafening. The only sound was the hum of the tires against the road and the occasional rustling from the back as one of them shifted in their sleep. I kept telling myself that I had done the right thing, that I had protected them, that I had protected myself, but the doubt kept creeping in. Was this really the best way? Was leaving without a word truly the answer? The logical part of me said yes. If I had confronted Marlene, if I had let her spin her lies, she would have turned everything around on me. She would have found a way to make me second-guess what I saw, to manipulate me into believing that I was the one who had been wrong. That's what she was good at, twisting reality until it suited her. But this time, she wouldn't get that chance. I had no destination, no plan beyond getting as far away as possible. The thought of checking into another motel made my stomach turn. I didn't want my kids living like that, bouncing from one unfamiliar room to another while I figured out what the hell to do next. I needed something more stable, even if just for a little while. That's when I remembered an old cabin my uncle had owned, way out in the middle of nowhere. I hadn't been there in years, not since I was a teenager, but if it was still standing, it could be exactly what I needed. I took the next exit and pulled over into a dimly lit gas station, my hands gripping the wheel as I tried to steady my racing thoughts. I could feel the exhaustion settling in, my muscles aching from being behind the wheel for so long. I needed to stop, even if just for a moment. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my phone from the passenger seat and turned it on. The screen immediately lit up with notifications. More missed calls, more texts, all from Marlene. Liam, answer me. I don't understand what's happening. Where are the kids? Please, I'm scared. I came home and everything is gone. This isn't funny. Just talk to me. Are you doing this to punish me? Is that what this is? Because if it is, you've made your point. Just tell me where my children are. The last message had come through an hour ago. My stomach tightened as I read it, my grip on the phone tightening. There was no apology, no confession, just panic. Not because she had lost me, but because she had lost control. I knew Marlene well enough to understand that she wasn't crying because of what she had done. She wasn't broken over the fact that she had betrayed me. No, she was crying because she had been caught, because her carefully built world had just come crashing down around her. I wanted to respond. I wanted to say something, anything, that would make her feel even an ounce of what I was feeling. But I knew there was no point. No words would change what had happened. No message would undo the damage. So, I turned the phone off again and shoved it back into the glove compartment. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror, barely recognizing the man staring back at me. I had aged overnight, my face drawn, my eyes hollow. I didn't know who I was anymore, but I knew one thing: couldn't turn back. I stepped out of the car, stretching my stiff legs as the cold night air wrapped around me. The gas station was nearly empty, save for an old truck parked near the pumps and a lone cashier inside. I grabbed a few snacks, some bottled water, and a map, because my phone was no longer something I could rely on. When I got back to the car, I sat there for a long moment, staring out at the empty road ahead. The kids stirred in the back seat, their soft murmurs breaking the silence. I took another deep breath and started the engine. I had no idea what I was heading toward, but I knew exactly what I was leaving behind. The further I drove, the more distant my old life felt. It was like I had stepped out of one world and into another, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. Yet, at the same time, I felt something else, something unfamiliar: relief. Marlene's texts had stopped, but I knew it wouldn't last. The silence wasn't surrender. It was the calm before the storm. I could picture her sitting in that empty house, her hands shaking as she tried to figure out what to do next. Would she call the police? Tell them I had kidnapped my own children? Would she try to track me down? Spin some sob story about how I had lost my mind? I didn't put anything past her, but I had planned for that. I had taken nothing that wasn't mine. The bank account she used was hers alone. I had my own savings, money she had no access to. The house? It was mine, inherited from my parents, something I had worked to maintain for years. I hadn't taken any of her belongings, hadn't touched a single thing that didn't belong to me or the kids. There was no legal ground for her to stand on. She could call whoever she wanted. I had done nothing wrong, at least not in the way she would want people to believe. The kids were still asleep when I pulled onto an old dirt road leading deep into the woods. The headlights illuminated the winding path ahead, trees towering on either side, casting eerie shadows that flickered and danced with every bump in the road. The last time I had been here, I was a teenager. The cabin had belonged to my Uncle Robert, a man who had lived most of his life alone, tucked away from the rest of the world. He had passed years ago, and the property had just sat here untouched, forgotten. It was perfect. When I reached the clearing, I finally exhaled. The cabin was still standing, though time had worn it down. The wooden steps leading to the porch sagged slightly, the windows filmed with years of dust. It wasn't much, but it was shelter, and for now it was home. I turned off the car and sat there for a moment, my hands gripping the wheel. The silence was thick, the kind that only existed in places untouched by the world. There were no street lights, no distant sounds of traffic, just the wind in the trees and the occasional hoot of an owl. This was it. This was where we would start over. I reached into the back seat and gently shook Harland awake. He blinked at me, his face groggy, confused. "Come on, buddy," I said softly. "We're here." He looked out the window, frowning. "Where is this?" "It's a special place," I said, hoping that was enough of an answer. "Somewhere we can be safe." Beatrice stirred in her car seat, letting out a soft whimper before settling back to sleep. I carried her out first, her small body heavy with the kind of deep sleep only little kids could manage. Harland followed, his small hand gripping my jacket as I led him up the creaky porch steps. The key was still in the same place my uncle had always kept it, hidden under the loose plank near the door. When I pushed it open, the smell of dust and old wood filled my lungs. It was cold but not unbearable. The furniture was still there. A worn-out couch, an old dining table, a fireplace that looked like it hadn't been used in years. Harland hesitated in the doorway. "Does Mom know we're here?" My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "Not yet." He stared at me for a long moment, and I wondered just how much he understood. Kids were smarter than we gave them credit for. I set Beatrice down on the couch, covering her with one of the blankets I had brought. Harland climbed up beside her, yawning. I sat on the floor next to them, my back against the wall, staring out the window into the endless darkness beyond. I had done it. I had left. I had taken my children, walked away from a broken marriage, and disappeared into the night. So why did it still feel like she had the power to rip this all away from me? I leaned my head back and closed my eyes. Tomorrow I would figure things out. Tomorrow I would figure out how to keep my children safe, how to make this place livable, how to survive. But tonight all I could do was breathe. The first thing I noticed when I woke up was the cold. Not the kind that makes you shiver, but the deep, settled cold that sinks into your bones. The fire had burned out sometime during the night, and the cabin had returned to its natural state. Silent, unmoving, frozen in time. The kids were still asleep, bundled under the blankets I had thrown over them, their tiny bodies curled up against the worn-out couch cushions. For a brief moment, I let myself believe that everything was okay, that this was just another morning in some alternate version of my life, where I had never seen those texts, never packed up in the dead of night, never walked away from the only home my children had ever known. But then, reality settled back in, heavy and unrelenting. I had made my choice. Now I had to live with it. I moved carefully, my muscles stiff from sleeping on the floor, and made my way to the kitchen. The cabin had been abandoned for years, but my uncle had always been the kind of man to prepare for anything. I checked the cabinets, half expecting to find nothing but dust, but to my surprise, there were still canned goods stacked neatly on the shelves. Expired, probably, but in a situation like this, I wasn't going to be picky. A rusted old coffee pot sat on the counter, and for a moment, I wished I had brought some coffee with me, anything to clear my head, to make me feel even a little normal. But there was no normal anymore, not for me. I pulled my phone from my pocket, hesitating before turning it on. A part of me didn't want to know what awaited me, but I had to check. As soon as the screen lit up, the messages flooded in. Marlene had been calling nonstop, dozens of missed calls. Her last voicemail had come in late last night, just a few hours after I had turned off the phone. My stomach twisted as I pressed play, holding it to my ear. Liam, please just call me. I don't understand what's happening. I came home and everything was gone. The kids, our kids. You took them and I have no idea where you are. Her voice cracked, and I could tell she was crying. If this is about us, if you found out about something, we can talk about it. I need to know they're okay. Please. I clenched my jaw, resisting the urge to throw the phone across the room. There it was, the slip-up. She hadn't denied it. She hadn't acted confused, hadn't tried to pretend like she didn't know why I left. She had jumped straight to damage control, trying to manipulate me before I even had the chance to confront her. I should have felt some kind of satisfaction in that, proof that I wasn't crazy, proof that my instincts had been right. But all I felt was emptiness. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready for that yet. Instead, I walked to the front door and stepped outside, letting the cold air hit me, hoping it would clear my head. The forest stretched out in every direction, thick and unyielding, the kind of place where you could disappear completely if you wanted to. Maybe that's what I needed. The sound of the cabin door creaking open behind me broke me from my thoughts. I turned to see Harlan standing there, rubbing his eyes, still half asleep. "Dad?" he murmured. "Where's Mom?" I felt that question like a punch to the gut. How was I supposed to answer that? How do you tell your 6-year-old that the person they love and trust more than anything has betrayed them? That the life they knew was built on a lie? I crouched down in front of him, keeping my voice steady. "Mom's not here right now, bud. It's just us for a little while." His brows furrowed. Did she do something bad? My breath caught in my throat. He was too young to understand the details, but he understood enough. She made some choices that hurt me, I admitted. And I needed to take you and be somewhere safe. Harlan stared at me for a long time, as if weighing my words. Then slowly he nodded. "Okay." Just like that. No more questions, no tears, just acceptance. I wished it was that easy for me. I ruffled his hair, forcing a smile. "Come on. Let's see if we can find something for breakfast." The day passed in a haze of small tasks. Clearing dust, checking for running water, there wasn't any. Making sure the kids were comfortable. I focused on what I could control because the second I let my mind wander, the doubt would creep in. By the time night fell, I was exhausted in a way I had never been before. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. The weight of everything pressed down on me, and I knew that this was only the beginning. Marlene wasn't going to let this go. I didn't know when, and I didn't know how, but she was going to come for me, and I needed to be ready. I didn't hear from Marlene the next morning. No new texts, no new calls, no desperate voicemails begging me to come back. The silence should have given me peace, but it didn't. Felt wrong, too calculated. I knew her well enough to understand that she wasn't the type to sit back and accept things. No, she was waiting, planning. I had spent the past decade watching her talk her way out of everything. Small lies, excuses that didn't quite add up, the little ways she twisted reality to suit her needs. I had ignored them because I loved her. I let them go because I had convinced myself that every marriage had its cracks, that as long as the foundation held, those cracks didn't matter. But now I saw it for what it really was. She had been preparing for this moment long before I ever realized it. The kids were still asleep when I stepped outside, breathing in the crisp morning air. The world felt different out here, untouched by the chaos I had left behind. I needed that. I needed to clear my head before reality came crashing down around me. I sat on the porch steps, staring out at the trees. It was quiet, peaceful. And then a thought hit me like a gut punch. What if she wasn't calling because she had already found a way to get to me? My heart pounded as I pulled my phone from my pocket, my fingers trembling as I turned it on. The screen flickered to life, and I braced myself for the flood of messages. But there was nothing. No missed calls, no texts, no voicemails. Just a single email. My stomach twisted as I tapped on it, the subject line sending a chill through me. "You can't just take them." I swallowed hard, my eyes scanning the message. Liam, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this isn't okay. You took our children. You left without a word. I understand that you're upset, but this isn't the way to handle things. I deserve a chance to explain, and they deserve to know the truth. If you don't come back soon, I will have no choice but to take legal action. This is your only chance to fix this before it gets worse. Legal action. I let the words sink in, rolling them over in my mind like stones in my palm. Of course, she would go that route. Not because she cared about the kids, not really. This wasn't about them. This was about control. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't heartbroken over what she had done. She was angry that I had taken away her ability to lie to me. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to breathe. I knew this wasn't over. It was only the beginning. I shut my phone off and shoved it deep into my pocket. I couldn't afford to let her get into my head. Not now. Not when I had to figure out my next move. I spent the rest of the morning making the cabin more livable, sweeping out the dust, airing out the old bedding, making sure the kids had food. They didn't ask many questions, which I was grateful for. Harlan seemed to understand, in his own way, that things were different now. Beatrice was too young to notice the shift, but I knew it was only a matter of time before the questions started. By the time the sun had climbed high in the sky, I had made up my mind. I needed help. I couldn't do this alone, no matter how much I wanted to. There was only one person I could turn to, someone who knew exactly who Marlene was, someone who had warned me years ago that this day would come. I just never listened. With a deep breath, I grabbed my keys and headed for the car. It was time to see my sister. The drive to my sister's house was long, winding, and filled with the kind of tension that sat heavy in my gut. I hadn't seen Delia in nearly 3 years, and now I was showing up on her doorstep with 2 kids. No explanation, and a life that had just imploded. The last time we spoke, she had warned me, "Liam, something's off about her. I don't trust her. You see what she wants you to see, but there's something underneath all that sweetness that just doesn't add up." I had dismissed it, brushed it off as Delia being overprotective, overly suspicious. She had always been the type to question everything, to poke holes in every story, every excuse. I thought she was wrong. But now I was pulling into her driveway, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white, wondering how I was supposed to tell her she had been right all along. The house was exactly as I remembered. Modest but warm, with wind chimes dangling from the porch and a set of mismatched patio chairs lined up against the railing. It looked untouched by time, a snapshot of stability in a life that felt like it was unraveling. I glanced at the kids in the back seat. Beatrice was still dozing, her tiny fingers curled around the edge of her blanket. Harlan, on the other hand, was fully awake, watching me with quiet curiosity. "Where are we?" he asked. "A safe place," I answered, trying to sound confident. "Your Aunt Delia's house." He didn't say anything, just nodded like that answer was good enough. I stepped out of the car, stretched the stiffness from my back, and walked up to the porch, hesitating for only a second before knocking. It didn't take long. The door swung open, and there she was, Delia, with the same sharp eyes and knowing expression she had always worn when it came to me. For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just took me in, the exhaustion on my face, the weight on my shoulders. Then her gaze flickered to the car, to the kids in the back seat, and something in her expression shifted. "You're in trouble," she said simply. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Yeah." She didn't ask anything else, didn't demand explanations. She just stepped aside and gestured for me to come in. I went back to the car, scooped Beatrice into my arms, and led Harlan inside. The warmth of the house wrapped around me, the scent of coffee and old books filling the air. It was the kind of home that felt lived in, safe. Delia disappeared into the kitchen, reappearing a few minutes later with mugs of hot tea and a plate of crackers for the kids. She handed one to Harlan, brushing a hand over his hair the way she used to when we were kids. "All right," she said, sitting across from me at the table. "Tell me everything." And so I did. I told her about the messages, about the months of lies, the betrayal, about how I had packed up the kids and left before Marlene could even realize what had happened. I told her about the emails, the threats, the way I knew deep down that this wasn't over. Delia listened, silent but attentive, her expression unreadable. When I finally finished, she leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "So, she's coming for you," she said. "Yeah. And you have no plan." I ran a hand through my hair. "Not really. Just stay off the grid. Keep the kids safe. Figure out the rest as I go." She exhaled sharply. "Liam, that's not a plan. That's surviving." I knew she was right, but what other choice did I have? She studied me for a long moment, then nodded to herself like she had already made up her mind. "You're staying here," she said, "for as long as you need. We'll figure this out. Together." I blinked, caught off guard. "Delia, I didn't come here to—" "I know," she interrupted, "but you don't have anywhere else to go. And you sure as hell can't do this alone." Her voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. And for the first time in days, I felt something shift inside me, hope. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I thought. I never thought I'd find peace again. Not after everything that had happened. Not after the betrayal, the lies, the unraveling of the life I thought I had built. But sitting on Delia's porch a few weeks later, watching my kids chase fireflies in the yard, I realized something. I was free. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of emotions, paperwork, and legal battles. But in the end, I had come out on top. Delia had been right. I couldn't just survive. I had to fight. And with her help, I did. The first thing we did was contact a lawyer. Someone Delia knew through work. A man who took one look at my situation and told me exactly what I needed to do. I had left legally, taken nothing that wasn't mine, and I had evidence. Months of messages, proof that Marlene had been unfaithful, emotionally absent, and untrustworthy. When she finally did try to take legal action, her case fell apart immediately. The moment she realized she wasn't in control anymore, that she couldn't manipulate the truth, her facade started to crack. She called me once, just once, after the dust had settled. I almost didn't answer, but a part of me needed closure. "Liam." Her voice was small, uncertain, so different from the woman I had once known. "I never meant for it to be like this." I let out a slow breath. "Neither did I." There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing, could picture her sitting in that empty house, knowing that she had lost. "Are you happy?" she finally asked. I thought about the kids, about Delia, about the long road ahead, and how, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel trapped. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." She didn't respond, just a quiet click as the call ended. And just like that, it was over. Now, sitting here in the cool night air, listening to my children laugh, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it was mine to build. And that was enough.